Rajiv Mehta and Ananya Mehta looked like the perfect couple celebrating 10 years of marriage on a luxury cruise, but behind their smiles hid jealousy, control, and rage, ending in a shocking night when Rajiv beat Ananya to death in front of their daughters, turning a dream anniversary into a true crime nightmare. Rajiv Mehta had always been the kind of man who liked to impress people with grand gestures. When their 10th wedding anniversary was approaching, he wanted to do something memorable, something that would not only surprise his wife, Ananya, but also create memories for their daughters, Mira and Ria. He booked a Mediterranean cruise that promised luxury, breathtaking views, and endless activities for families. It was the kind of trip that many couples dreamt about but rarely experienced. To everyone around them, it looked like the perfect way to celebrate a milestone in their marriage. In the weeks leading up to the voyage, Ananya posted pictures on social media of their preparations. She shared snapshots of shopping trips with the girls, suitcases laid open on the bed, and captions about 10 years of love and togetherness. Friends showered the posts with likes and comments, calling them the perfect family. No one knew that Ananya often typed those captions with a heavy heart, forcing herself to believe in the illusion of happiness she was showing to the world. When the family boarded the cruise ship, they seemed to fit right into the postcard picture of joy. The girls squealed with excitement as they explored the decks and pools. Rajiv carried their bags with a smile, greeting the staff and taking videos of every detail. Ananya wore a soft pink dress that first evening, and Rajiv insisted on taking selfies of them against the golden horizon. Other passengers noticed the family's presence, especially the way the daughters clung to their mother's side, while Rajiv played the role of the proud husband and father. To outsiders, everything looked idyllic. The family dined together in the ship's restaurants, sampling exotic dishes and posing for photographs that would later be sold to them as souvenirs. They laughed as they attended a musical show in the evening, with the children's laughter echoing louder than anyone else's. Rajiv seemed to enjoy being the center of attention, raising glasses of wine in toasts, talking loudly, and bragging about the success of his business back in Mumbai. Ananya, quiet and graceful, smiled politely, never letting anyone glimpse the strain behind her eyes. During the day, they spent hours by the pool. Mira and Ria splashed in the water while their mother watched them carefully, always ready with towels and sunscreen. Rajiv lounged with a drink in hand, occasionally joining them for photographs. He often pointed out other families on the ship, comparing them to his own, boasting that his wife was more beautiful, that his daughters were more well-behaved. For Ananya, these moments were bittersweet. She adored her children and wanted desperately to give them happy memories, but she also knew how quickly Rajiv's mood could shift. She kept her voice soft and her gestures calm, hoping that nothing would trigger his temper during the trip. At night, when the ship glided silently through the dark waters, the cabin filled with the sound of ocean waves against the hull. To the girls, it felt magical, as if they were living in a floating palace. They curled up next to their mother, whispering about the adventures that awaited them at the next port. Ananya stroked their hair and kissed their foreheads, silently promising to protect them. Rajiv would usually sit on the balcony with a drink, staring into the endless sea, his thoughts a mystery even to those closest to him. For most passengers, the Mehtas were just another happy family on vacation. They blended into the background of cruise ship life, one more group celebrating love, laughter, and milestones. Nobody could have guessed that the picture, perfect smiles, were carefully staged, or that beneath the surface, cracks were already spreading across their marriage. What was meant to be a journey of celebration was, without anyone realizing it, quietly setting the stage for tragedy. The illusion of perfection that Rajiv and Ananya projected to the outside world was fragile, held together by Ananya's silence and her determination to shield her daughters from the reality of their home life. Behind the closed doors of their cabin, the cracks in their marriage began to widen. Rajiv's temper, always close to the surface, showed itself in small but cutting ways. He complained about the cabin being too small, the food not being to his taste, or the girls being too noisy. What others dismissed as normal irritations were, for Ananya, warning signs of what could follow if she responded in the wrong way. Ananya had spent years learning how to navigate her husband's moods. A gentle word, a quiet nod, or even staying silent altogether were survival tactics she used to avoid confrontations. On the cruise, she hoped things might be different. She wanted to believe that away from the stresses of work and daily life in Mumbai, Rajiv might relax and enjoy his family. At times he seemed to, laughing with the girls or holding her hand during a stroll on deck. But these moments never lasted long. It was as though the happiness itself irritated him, like a reminder of something he could not control. Rajiv grew jealous quickly. He watched closely whenever Ananya spoke to other passengers, even if it was just a polite conversation. At dinner, if she exchanged smiles with a waiter or thanked someone too warmly, his expression hardened. Later, in the privacy of their cabin, he accused her of embarrassing him, of trying to draw attention to herself. His voice was low and sharp, the kind that made the girls hold their breath in fear. Ananya tried to dismiss his accusations with calm words, assuring him she meant nothing by it, but the suspicion never left his eyes. The daughters, though young, were perceptive. They noticed the way their mother's shoulders tensed when Rajiv entered the room, and how she always glanced at him before making even the smallest decision. They noticed how quickly their father's smile could vanish, replaced by an icy glare that silenced everyone around him. Mira, the elder daughter, began to step in during tense moments, trying to distract her father with questions or stories. Ria, the younger one, clung to Ananya, sensing that something was wrong but not fully understanding what. Crew members occasionally overheard raised voices through the cabin walls. A steward passing by once caught fragments of Rajiv's angry tone, but dismissed it as a husband and wife having a private disagreement. Another guest noticed the girls sitting quietly on a bench outside their cabin while their parents argued inside. Yet, on a ship filled with hundreds of passengers, these small glimpses did not seem alarming enough to act upon. For Ananya, the cruise became a balancing act. She smiled for the photographs, joined in the family activities, and tried to give her daughters the joyful experiences they deserved. But each day she felt herself growing more anxious, bracing for the next outburst. The vast blue sea that surrounded the ship offered beauty and escape for everyone else, but for her it felt like a cage, a place where there was no way out if Rajiv's anger turned violent. As the days passed, the pressure mounted silently, like a storm building on the horizon. Ananya hoped that by keeping the peace she could prevent disaster, but deep inside, a chilling realization was beginning to take hold. This trip, meant to celebrate love and commitment, was becoming a stage for something much darker. The evening of their anniversary was supposed to be the highlight of the trip. The cruise staff had decorated the dining hall with glittering lights, crisp white linens, and soft music that floated through the air like a romantic promise. Ananya dressed carefully, choosing a navy blue gown that shimmered under the golden chandeliers. She curled her daughter's hair, helping them into matching dresses so they could feel part of the celebration. For a moment, as they walked toward the hall, they looked like a picture, perfect family ready to mark a milestone with joy. The atmosphere inside the dining room was alive with laughter and chatter. Waiters moved gracefully between tables, serving glasses of champagne and trays of steaming food. Ananya glowed under the attention of the other guests, her warm smile making her seem approachable and kind. Strangers complimented her dress, and one couple remarked on how beautiful the family looked together. Rajiv forced a grin, but beneath his polished exterior, resentment brewed. He noticed how easily people were drawn to his wife, how her presence seemed to command admiration without her even trying. Each smile directed at her felt like a slight against him. As the night went on, Rajiv drank heavily. Glass after glass of wine disappeared into his hand, loosening his tongue but tightening his temper. He made loud jokes at the table, talking over others and drawing attention to himself. When Ananya laughed too freely at someone else's story, his jaw clenched. When she leaned in to help the girls cut their food and missed his attempt at conversation, he slammed his glass on the table a little too hard. People nearby glanced over but quickly looked away, not wanting to intrude. The girls tried to keep the peace, smiling nervously and focusing on their meals. They sensed the change in their father's mood, the heaviness that came when his anger began to grow. Ananya, ever careful, tried to smooth things over with soft words and gentle glances, but her efforts only fueled his irritation. To him, her kindness toward others was betrayal, her calmness in the face of his frustration an insult. After dessert, the family posed for a photograph taken by the ship's photographer. The image captured smiling faces under the glow of the dining room lights, but behind Ananya's eyes was the shadow of unease. When the dinner ended and they made their way back to the cabin, Rajiv walked several steps ahead, his silence sharp and foreboding. The girls clung to their mother's hands, their excitement from earlier replaced by quiet dread. Inside the cabin, the tension finally erupted. Rajiv confronted Ananya, his voice rising in anger as he accused her of humiliating him in front of others. The daughters sat on their beds, frozen and wide-eyed, as their father's words turned into shouts. Ananya tried to calm him, insisting she had done nothing wrong, but her pleas only seemed to ignite him further. His rage boiled over, and what began as sharp accusations spiraled into violence. His hands, once raised in toasts and celebrations, now struck with fury. The confined space of the cabin became a prison of terror. The walls seemed to echo with every blow, trapping the sound of horror within. The girls screamed for him to stop, their cries mixing with their mother's desperate gasps. In that moment, the anniversary that had started with laughter, music, and promise transformed into an unspeakable nightmare. The screams of the daughters pierced through the corridor outside the cabin, drawing the attention of nearby passengers. Doors cracked open, faces appeared in confusion, and within seconds crew members were rushing down the hallway toward the sound of panic. When they entered the room, the scene was one of pure horror. Ananya lay on the floor, motionless, her hair spread across the carpet like a dark halo. Blood marked her skin where blows had landed, her body bearing the unmistakable signs of brutal violence. Rajiv stood over her, breathing heavily, his fists clenched, his shirt soaked in sweat. His daughters clung to each other in the corner, their small bodies trembling as they cried out for their mother. The crew acted quickly. 2 security officers restrained Rajiv, pulling him away as he resisted, shouting incoherently about betrayal and humiliation. His words made little sense, his voice hoarse from rage, but the violence in his eyes was undeniable. The captain was alerted immediately, and the ship's medical team rushed to the cabin, though it was already too late. Ananya's pulse had stopped. The doctor pronounced her dead on the spot, the celebration of 10 years of marriage ending in a moment of irreversible tragedy. News of the incident spread quickly across the ship. Passengers whispered in shock as rumors circulated, each version more horrifying than the last. Families who had dined next to the Mehtas just hours earlier struggled to reconcile the image of a smiling couple with the brutal reality now being whispered in the corridors. Children who had played with Mira and Ria at the pool were ushered away by their parents, while adults exchanged anxious glances, unsettled by the realization that violence had unfolded so close to them. The captain made the decision to detain Rajiv in a secure room under constant guard. He sat there, silent and unmoving, as if the weight of what he had done had not yet settled in. Some crew members described his demeanor as cold, almost detached, while others noted his occasional bursts of anger, shouting at no one in particular, still convinced that he had been wronged. Meanwhile, the daughters were taken into the care of a senior staff member who tried to comfort them. They clutched each other tightly, their faces pale, their eyes swollen from tears. Every now and then they asked for their mother, not fully able to grasp that she was gone. The ship itself seemed to shift into an atmosphere of mourning. Entertainment events were quietly canceled. Music in the lounges was lowered, and a heavy silence hung in the air. Passengers moved more cautiously, their conversations hushed, as though the tragedy had tainted the sense of joy that cruises usually promised. Many avoided the hallways near the Mehta's cabin, unable to forget the echoes of screams they had heard. When the ship docked at its next port, law enforcement officers boarded immediately. Rajiv was escorted off in handcuffs, his daughters watching from a distance, held by trembling arms that were not their mothers. The image of the man who had once been the center of their family, now being led away as a criminal, burned itself into their memories. Passengers stood silently on the deck, watching the scene unfold, some holding their own children closer. What had begun as a vacation of celebration now carried the weight of death, and the ship itself seemed to bear the scars of a crime no one on board would ever forget. The case quickly became a storm of headlines, first in the port city where Rajiv was arrested, and then across international media outlets. News channels ran images of the smiling family taken just days earlier on the cruise, contrasting them with grim shots of Rajiv being led away in handcuffs. The contrast was chilling. A man who had celebrated his wedding anniversary one evening was now being charged with the murder of his wife. The story carried all the elements that gripped the public's imagination. Love, betrayal, family, and violence played out on the stage of a luxury ship. For Ananya's family in India, the news was devastating. They had been eagerly waiting for updates about her trip, expecting cheerful stories and photographs. Instead, they received the crushing reality that their daughter was gone, and in the most brutal way imaginable. Relatives flew to Europe to claim her body and to take custody of Mira and Ria, who were left traumatized and confused. The girls were thrust into a world of police interviews, social workers, and endless questions about what they had witnessed. Though everyone around them tried to protect them, they had seen too much for their young minds to forget. The trial was long and painful. Rajiv's defense argued that alcohol and stress had clouded his judgment, suggesting that the killing was not premeditated but a tragic moment of rage. The prosecution countered with evidence of a pattern of control and abuse, presenting witness statements about the arguments overheard on the ship, as well as testimony from Ananya's friends who revealed how she had confided her fears about her husband's temper. The most powerful voices in the courtroom, however, came from the daughters. In soft, trembling tones, they recounted the horror of that night, the shouting, the violence, the desperate cries for their mother to be spared. Their testimony left the courtroom silent, the weight of their words pressing heavily on everyone present. Rajiv showed little remorse throughout the proceedings. At times he appeared defiant, other times distant, as though disconnected from the reality of what he had done. When the verdict was finally delivered, the judge sentenced him to life imprisonment. The courtroom erupted in mixed emotions, relief from Ananya's family that justice had been served, and sorrow from others who could not help but feel that the tragedy had destroyed not one life, but an entire family. The aftermath was equally haunting. Mira and Ria were placed in the care of their maternal relatives, who tried to provide stability and love, but the shadow of what they had witnessed lingered. They grew up with the memory of their mother's final moments, burned into their minds, and the knowledge that their father was the one who had taken her from them. Ananya's name became a symbol in conversations about domestic violence, a reminder of how abuse can remain hidden until it erupts in catastrophic ways. What was meant to be a celebration of love had ended as a cautionary tale, warning others of the dangers of silence and the need to recognize signs of control and aggression before they escalate. For the daughters, the anniversary that should have been filled with laughter and joy would forever be remembered as the night their world collapsed. The ocean that once sparkled with promise had carried away not only their mother, but also the innocence of their childhood, leaving behind scars that time could never fully heal.